Everyone, Joshua and Rachel B. Lee here. We've got an amazing just guest and friend today, Joe Fier, the co-founder of Evergreen Profits. Joe's a seasoned marketer, applies most of his experience helping business owners grow through fan building in creative ways. He's the co-host of Hustle and Flowchart, which I had the honor to be part of. And, just overall, Joe's just an amazing, good dude. And, behind some of the very large podcasts that people don't even realize he's a part of. And today Rachel and I get the opportunity to kind of go through, talk podcasting, creating content, heck, maybe some, branding, maybe some husband and wife, working together kind of call.
Yeah, you can tell us how we should start a podcast, maybe.
Let's do it. It's good. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, and I'm always stoked to. Well, Rachel, it's the first time we've met. But we've having a good fun pre-chat here, so I know this is gonna be a good time for everybody.
Well, and everyone, look, Joe, we were getting in here. I was trying to hold back Rachel with a lot of different questions. She's just, she gets very excited, especially when she talks to someone around branding and podcasting and all those aspects. So, Rachel, I'll let you kind of kick it off.
Well, let's first tell people a little bit about how you got into podcasting and what Hustle and Flowchart is about and where it's at today. It's obviously a major podcast.
Thank you. Yeah. So Matt Wolf is my business partner and co-host, and we've been doing online marketing since 2007, and podcasting kind of came into our lives around 2010. So it's been 11 years now, which is crazy. We had no clue what we were doing then. So we were just hacking everything together, had no systems, had no really agenda. We were just like, let's just talk on this mic thing and talk about what we're learning. So we've always been the type to learn a lot, but then talk about what we just learned about from like Frank Kern, Tony Robbins back in the day, when we were starting out. And it was just a way to relate and, maybe grow a little audience, but they all fizzled out. We had about 4 or 5 podcasts. Matt had a couple more. Hustle and Flowchart came into the picture about 5 years ago. And since then, we've never missed an episode. Everything's been super systemized. We've honed into the brand now. This is what, Rachel, I was telling you, is now we're leaning into Hustle and Flowchart. It's kind of taking over everything in the company. It's become the thing that everyone kind of knows us for, and they're thanking us now to stop saying Evergreen Profits, but go to.
I always have to kind of remember too. I'm like, okay, there's 2 different sides of it. So yeah,
well, rebrand.
We are in a rebrand right now. Actually,
is it a rebrand or is it a one brand?
It's a rebrand.
Oh, it's rebranding right now. Yeah, we have a whole new
branding lady boss.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You would rip us a new, we're not going to go there now on the rebrand, but when we rebrand, I'll show you, Rachel, and maybe give us some pointers. So yeah, it's been fun. So the podcast now, we just basically highlight the most interesting people in our network. We speak to mainly entrepreneurs, digital marketers, now with a bigger push to hey, let's go big with this brand and make it the top business podcast and bring in the celebrity, because we just noticed our network is so interesting. And if we ask and if we kind of push ourselves, we can connect with pretty much anyone. And we're like, well, let's bring some A-listers and celebrities and talk about their perspective of business, because we're all entrepreneurs at the end of the day. A lot of those folks are as well. So let's share that with everyone here and have a good time. So it's fun first, and we just basically give away as much of the content as we possibly can. And we kind of built a nice little company in the back end of there by promoting other people.
I love that, man.
I see Gabby Bernstein was on.
Mm-hmm. Gabby, Dennis Yu, Perry Marshall, Ryan Dice. These are all good friends. Dave Asprey. Joshua B. Lee.
That guy. That's right.
So here's some of my questions, because if you're watching right now, let us know that you're here. Hello, tell us where you're in from on this Friday. Let's talk about podcasting. Like you said, we're 10 years in. I was running the Microsoft Partner Network podcast, and it really kicked off. That was in 2017. And at that time, the data was showing podcasting is on the up and up, right? This is where it's going. And now everybody has a podcast, because that's great because it's accessible, right? It's super accessible for people to pick up their phone, pick up a mic and create content. But it's also time consuming, and is there
Yep.
really the effectiveness? Like, what do you think makes a podcast effective? I literally am talking to a client right now about this who produces a podcast. I'm not getting that much ROI on it, right? So, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, why create a podcast? And if you're doing that, how can you actually monetize it?
For sure. Yeah. So it's a common question. And yeah, everyone and their mom and grandma, even at this point, have podcasts.
I
And
had one for a while.
see, I mean, I wouldn't even question. I had just assumed. So yeah, and I think you should because it's your own personal stage. There's a lot of reasons why you would want it in terms of like networking. I mean, it's the best way to connect with almost anyone in your network that you want to, and maybe there's some opportunity there to collaborate together. So that's not a direct like, hey, I'm going to ROI on this podcast, but like think about the relationship that's built. So Josh, like after we had you on the show and we had a mutual connection, I forget who at this point, but that's usually how it goes is
Right.
someone introduces us. So there's already a warm connection there. We have a cool time on a podcast or a chat like this. And then we do some stuff afterwards. We do some follow-up. So I would say that's how we approach podcasting and get the most out of it. Is we're meeting the most interesting people in our network, and then they're referring us to other interesting people. And then we have this interesting bond, not only with guests that come through, but the people that listen to us. We we've tested like every modality it feels like online to present our content because we're just content marketers at the end of the day, and we share everything we can. So we're like, what, podcasting is the easiest way to do that. It is time consuming, but we would do it anyway in some other format if it's writing. Like I'd
Right.
rather just speak it out and talk with other people and set that machine in motion. But in terms of like actually making it effective, I would say just figuring out what's the why behind your podcast. Is like, why are you even going to start a show? Is it just to talk into a mic and put your thoughts in the world or listen to yourself? I mean, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. But for us, we've always wanted to share more and more. And then we know the power is the bond with the audience and the people that we're chatting with. But like the bond with an audience with a podcast, you got to think like you're listening to or you're talking to one person at one time. It's not like a masses are listening to a podcast together and saying like, "Oh man, check this out." It's a very one-to-one kind of connection at scale. And that's what we've noticed is it's a very easy way to create fans. You don't need a lot of fans to actually make, like say if you have a consulting business, you can definitely bring leads into whatever offer that's relevant to your show with just a very small group of folks listening. I knew a guy who he basically sells out every live conference that he does. Has about 300 people there, but he doesn't have more than about 500 people listening to his show at any one time. And it's the bond, it's the consistency of showing up with someone on their schedule. And they kind of just get used to, all right, well, Joe's in my ear again, Rachel's in my ear, Josh is, and
Yeah.
then from there, anything can kind of happen wherever you direct them after that.
But brother, that's the thing, right? This is what I love because you talked about building relationships, the connection, right? You didn't go into because so many people are going, well, I'm gonna start a podcast, I'm gonna monetize it. I see these people are making money, right?
Right.
And that's always the wrong way. I mean, like even at Standout Authority here, while we work with people at LinkedIn, if someone comes to us and they say, hey, Josh or Rachel, can you help us monetize LinkedIn? We're like, not our client, that's not us. There's 1,000 people behind us that'll take your money because that's exactly what they're gonna do. And that's why I think you and I connect, and that's why this is so important because it's that human to human, really being able to connect and build that relationship. And one thing we say all the time, Rachel and I, it's like conversations turn into relationships, relationships turn into opportunity.
Yeah, man.
So
I wouldn't agree. I mean, I would never argue that point because that's exactly what we're living right now. And it's 5 years in on this podcast. I've been doing it a while, but you don't need to spend a lot of time with podcasts. I mean, just think of the connections you can make in your circle. Even if you're brand new, you can kind of play the dumb person in the room or in the mic and just ask the questions, and you'll get respect that way. You'll grow your network, a nice little group of folks that are around you that want to hear more from you. And honestly, if you're just consistent and keep showing up, good things will happen with it. That's what we've found.
I love that, man. And like this is the day and age of repurposing, right? Like Rachel and I, she was talking about time, right? And we always go through this, like, where do we spend our time? Because, we spend a lot of time on Clubhouse. I mean, honestly, that's where
Oh yeah,
you and I were first kind of connecting as well, too, a lot on
that's
Clubhouse.
true.
And, and then there's podcasting, there's LinkedIn Lives, there's Facebook Lives, there's Instagram. I mean, there's everywhere. But I mean, it's always that question, like, okay, if we're going to create content, how do we repurpose it to be able to create really like your own media across the board that really resonates and creates raving fans, and it's not just cookie cutter. So, I mean, how are you guys doing that?
Oh man. Yeah, repurposing is the name of the game. So we would never expect everyone to want to listen to podcasts all the time because I know I'm not that guy either. So, but that's the main modality. But recently, I'm not in it right now, but typically I'm in my studio, not using a Blue Yeti microphone either. Usually I have this whole like studio setup, so sorry. But
Works
yeah,
fine.
we're video first now. Like so for 3.5, 4 years, we weren't really paying a lot of attention to video. But so we got the studio and we got a nice camera. You don't need to do all this stuff. But we just saw, hey, if you're doing video, just like you guys are, everyone should have a video component. It's just going to allow your repurposing to go much further. So, we're doing that. YouTube is a big push for us right now, just for
Okay.
discoverability. It's a grind at first, but we're starting to now see some momentum in kind of organic stuff. Once you get past that 1,000 subscriber, it's like the toughest thing to break through that. It's crazy.
I
Like,
get it.
way more people. Yeah, it's crazy. But so that's interesting for repurposing is, show up on platforms that have the algorithms that help you with growth. And podcasting doesn't necessarily have that in the audio form by itself. Like I would never, and we never actually have relied on iTunes or Spotify or any of these things to push our message, even though Spotify is starting to kind of work. So that's a better one. iTunes, garbage. You want to be on there,
That's a
but
good
let's.
bit of information for people because when I did podcasts, we would use Libsyn Pro and stream it out through everything.
That's what we use. We're on
You
Libsyn
do?
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
wasn't sure if that's still the best platform.
They've been around forever. I mean,
Yeah.
there's great platforms, but again, they're all kind of the same,
Yeah.
and they all have these little nuances. So just like hosting, like web hosting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, so we distribute that way. So video is a big component. Spotify is a great platform. They're making a big push in podcasting right now, and all the stats show that they're actually overtaking Apple, at least around the world. And I think US is like the last handout, and it's pretty close. Or like
I mean,
they're about to
Apple
overtake.
hasn't focused on the podcasting bit for years.
That's right.
Even with all, like, they don't, for the algorithm, they're not custom curating, and Spotify is literally the biggest data center,
That's right.
the most customized content. I mean, I'm obsessed with Spotify, but
And we pay for Spotify. We don't pay. I mean, even though we have all Apple products, we don't pay for Apple Music, but we definitely pay for Spotify.
I'm surrounded by Apple products right now. It's ridiculous, but yeah. But you're right. I mean, Spotify, it's essentially going to be, and it seems like their mission is the YouTube of audio and music, podcasts, all that stuff. So you definitely want to be there. But on the other side of repurposing, we actually take stuff offline. I wish I had one in front of me, but we do these physical newsletters on the back of. Yeah, we actually have a
Dude, I
paid
was
subscription.
extremely impressed because it wasn't even, and I know I just cut you off. I'm sorry because I get excited, stuff like that. So I went on your podcast and I know the newsletter comes out. I didn't even know about the newsletter because I got a friend of mine that was actually a client, and she goes, "Hey, look at this," and sends me pictures of my section in the newsletter. She's like, "I just got this in the mail," and I was like, "Holy crap, this is awesome."
Yeah, man, that's it. So we actually have a note taker listening to every single episode, and this is definitely an add-on, and it takes some budget, but we have someone actually take written notes, not transcriptions, and they're essentially cliff notes of every episode. So, like yesterday, we just released an episode with Robert Cialdini, and we're like, man, this is so cool to have him on, like legend. And so we have notes on that. That becomes, so when we call out the call to action on the podcast, we say, go to hustleandflowchart.com/notes. And I don't know why my Siri is going off right now. Stop, Siri. Go away. Technology. So if anyone wanted to grab free notes on Cialdini, that's where you get them. But you see an example of what those look like. And every month, at the end of the month, we package them up into about like a 30-page written or a physical newsletter. Have them printed and shipped all around the world. And it's basically, I would say those are like our, not the super fans, but the people that are really attached to our brand and our message. And it's a great way to take people offline. People love to share the images.
I had never seen
it's
it
cool to
before, but
pass
I knew I
out
have a
those things.
I want
podcast.
to talk about this a little bit. I want to dig into this. So, this is real marketing, right? And this is actually a big topic of my my LinkedIn Live last week with Albert. And we were talking about this home to home and this new physical digital experience that we're in right now. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of people think about podcasts as just like one conversation, one way. And so what you're talking about is how do you take that conversation, a listening modality, and bring it into a web experience, into a physical experience? I think that's
Yep.
really important that marketers and people that are trying to build brands, this is a total, like marketers are not used to doing this. So
Podcasters aren't used to doing this either.
Not at
right.
all.
And forget corporate.
I've never seen
Forget
it. Never done.
So you have how many people listen to your podcast?
We have about 50,000 downloads per month. So
Okay, that's a shit ton. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
We
amazing.
try to raise that way higher though.
50,000 people. Hey, Keneal. Hey, Emilio. So you have 50,000 people that are listening. You say to them, you want to check out more, our show notes, whatever, go to, was it hustleandflowchart.com?
No.
Yeah.
What was the
slash
notes?
Yeah.
Slash notes. So you drive them there. What's your sort of, like how many clicks do you get? Are you getting a lot of traffic to that?
It's a good question. So we just changed the call to action, and I'll tell you, we simplified it, and that page is literally brand new as of this week. So what we used to do is actually send people to Facebook, our Facebook group. We had a little redirect, and this was a different URL. I'm not going to shout it out and like confuse everyone, but it would take take people to our Facebook group, and there was a way for people to opt in on the series of questions. It was a little confusing, but at least it got people into the group and onto our email list on one swoop. Now we kind of engineered it a little easier, but in terms of like, that's where the stats, like the whole thing, we just weren't tracking anything. So now, honestly, I don't know right now, but I know that's the main lead gen from everything we do is through the podcast. If you go to the website, we have opt-ins that go to the exact same thing as well. And I mean, those...
And then people are going there. So I think this is because I know I struggled with this with Microsoft, and just how do you take people from podcast into your environment so that they actually become a customer of some sort, right? A part of your community. And then maybe at some point you actually make money off of them. But so you're driving them in at one point to Facebook, now to your website, and there's some sort of email capture, some sort of download. And then they come into your subscriber base, and you are wrapping up all of the findings and mailing them on a monthly basis.
To the ones that pay. Yeah. So that's the paid element.
That's part of it.
So it's, so that's our, this is the rebrand as well. Right now it's called the Evergreen Profits newsletter. That's going to be the Hustle and Flowchart, probably Flow Notes is what we're going for. You like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Got to thank Molly Mahoney on that one.
That's good. Yeah. That's good.
Thank you. We'll roll with it then. It's on the page too, I think, on that new page. So, yeah. So that's I would say that's the first touch. Like, so someone has the opportunity to give us money would be right on the back of that opt-in. So they'll get the opportunity to say, hey, it's $15 a month to get the newsletter in the mail. We try to price it basically as low as we possibly could, or $59 a year for the digital version. So we give them two options there. And from there, I mean, the idea there is, okay, cool. Now we have another opportunity to get in front of an audience who's paying now. And we use actually little inserts. So we have sponsors on the podcast. That gives us the opportunity to now use that another placement for sponsorships. So they can now be seen in front of our customers rather than just our podcast listeners. Also, it's a great opportunity for affiliate offers, maybe software tools that we recommend. Well, now we could put an insert in this newsletter, and this is something that colored pieces of paper, all that. We learned this all from like Brian Kurtz, for instance. All the
Brian,
and he loves the model too. He was the one that was like, man, this is genius. You're taking them from online to offline, and then back to online, and you're kind of directing attention. And that's what we've noticed is when we've tried to take away the newsletter part, people actually kind of revolt. We're like, but this is the part that's like, it does take a little bit more systems and effort to pull off, but it just seems like it's a bonding thing. Again, just like the podcast is. So that's what we realized is all these little things help with the bond with the people around you.
Well, and now I think there's just a really interesting opportunity for brands to add more physical experiences in the home environment.
Mhm.
So we're seeing that where, the box that comes in the house, right? How is Hustle and Flowchart going to be sending? What is it going to come
Mm.
in? What is that experience of opening
think
it? Is it a piece of paper that's sending the notes, or is it something cool, right? And there then becomes a surprise and delight factor.
Yeah.
So every month,
So we're talking about man
what
cave boxes and stuff like that you get every single
I
week?
Yeah.
assume there's women listening on their
Oh,
podcast
yeah, I'm
too.
sorry.
Gabby
Yeah.
Bernstein was on it.
That's right.
But this is a really big opportunity for you and for any
I
person
like that.
listening. And this is what I've been talking to the best branding people across the world about, is that this home to home experience that people are in, which is not going away. People are working
No.
and living and breathing at home, actually is bringing back in direct mail and
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? And
Totally is. Yeah.
so for brands like yourself, as you're in this rebrand, what other things, and then sponsorship opportunities, because you can have the sponsored drop in whatever things.
That's right.
I think it's really interesting time for that. So I'm really excited to hear that what I really hope people listen with the podcast, that these are how you extend it into a real branding opportunity.
I love that. And that's the push. And I've not thought of the box idea because we do a lot of physical stuff. We have a lot of physical home addresses or office addresses.
Yeah.
So, and which is extremely valuable as well. Yeah, I mean, I love that, Rachel, because I could see, because we're doing a bigger push, obviously with the brand, but also other brands to do more partnership type stuff. So,
I mean, think about dropping a book from one of the interviewers, right? Like every
Mhm.
month, if you get in here, we're going to pick one book from, or two books from our people that we interview. If
That's
you're
right.
part of this program, we drop it. Because I mean, I had a book. Believe me, you want people to mail for you. You want to be able to push that out there. So,
Yeah, that's
massive,
good.
massive things, and that's an easy way to be able to really even get more podcast guests, the bigger ones. Because wait a minute, you're going to also mail my book and buy so
Mhm.
many books from me to be able to send to your audience.
And that's the
Love that.
metric for authors. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love that, man. Yeah,
That's what
this
we're here
whole box
for.
idea. Yeah, thank you, both y'all. Yeah, and we were actually so with our podcasting course, Pod Hacker, we were going to do a whole box in the mail, but the price points really weren't justifying it because
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah,
But
it is. It's not cheap.
No,
it's
you got to be
not.
able to
But
have
there's some,
the whole right piece in the company to be able to support you on the back end, because you don't want to be doing
yeah,
that. You want to be able
heck
to have
no.
another company that's kind of outsourcing and being able to put it out. So, you know,
Yep.
look, again, we all have different ideas we kind of go through, but I mean, I think this one could be I know I'd pay for that, to be able to get those
Yeah,
books in, to be able to kind of come in, being able to get that kind of stuff. I still looking, oh, the mail's coming today, which after a
for
while,
sure.
we didn't get to that point.
We'll
So,
we'll, s- we'll start sending the flow boxes out.
here we
Yeah, we'll do
go.
something like that.
Flowbox.
Flow chart, flow box. I
The
mean, we're just
Flowbox. Get your
everything.
Flowbox.
Get your flow on.
That's right.
Yeah, you
That's
get your
right.
flow on. There's
Stay in
Oh.
the flow.
we're flowing today.
Ah! All right, Matt, if you're watching, we
Where's
got a
Matt?
new idea.
This is where I expect Matt to bust through the side over here. I'm like, I'm here. And you're like, dude, I didn't invite you to the house. No, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
What you
Joe,
got,
we were talking a little bit about Clubhouse. So, one of the other things that have really kind of come up, and we're like, oh, Clubhouse is going to change the way podcasts didn't do is what we all kind of thought it was going to be able to change and shift and be able to take that over. But, I get all the time from Fireside. And
Yeah.
Fireside, I'm not sure if you checked it out or not, but it's more like a live podcasting. They had Mark Cuban was an investor on it. Have you guys heard anything more about that? I mean, I get messages all the time. I've talked to Rachel about us, maybe we should try it out because it sub syndicates live, plus you can do the podcast and then syndicate it out across other channels. They do all that stuff for you. You can even charge a ticket to it.
Yeah, I've not used the platform, but I've heard a lot about it, and they've definitely sent a bunch of stuff our way. I think they were blasting a bunch of podcasters in general too. It seems a lot more interesting than Clubhouse. I know there's so many of these audio things around now. Even Spotify has Green Room.
Oh yeah, Green Room. Well, LinkedIn's going to come out with one later this year. So
I've heard that. Yeah. So I mean, Fireside, it's interesting because of the live podcast component and the fact that it integrates with other things. I'm definitely not the one to speak on that,
I figured I'd just ask if you had heard anything.
Like, yeah. No, but there are more people asking about live podcasting and call-ins or, interactive. So I think there's a place for it if it's a format that kind of fits, but for us right now, I mean, we haven't explored that. I think I don't know. It might be something to explore for someone maybe starting out where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, they kind of have the infrastructure built. There's probably a built-in network that's going to help you get discovered a little quicker.
Yeah.
So I would definitely explore it, and I'm sure we will as well. We just got to find a place for it.
We all try everything at least once, right?
Gotta. So you can talk about it at least. Yeah.
So Joe, because we're coming in here at our 30 minutes, if you were to have one or two tips or kind of takeaways for people that are taking their podcast and really extending it into an entire business model and brand, because I know you also do coaching, you have programming. What do you think is the best way to go about it?
So the best way, again, starting with the why. That's really, I know the whole Simon Sinek thing. Start with why. I think it's so important though with podcasting because you could take it any kind of format, any kind of guest. I mean, it can kind of run itself if you don't have your boundaries set around what you're doing with your show. Because we
Right.
see this as our stage, like a podcast, the YouTube channel. They're all like that's the place that we have curated the best of the best, the topics we want to display to our audience. It's how we connect with others. So for for us, I mean, we see everything as a journey as well. So the podcast is kind of the discovery phase for most people. That's how they find us, or maybe it's on YouTube now. It's kind of integrated into one.
Go
But then
find
we
Joe
know
and Matt on YouTube.
that's right. Go do it. Subscribe, please. It's a grind, but it's cool. So I would say, think about the journey. Like, what's the next step that you want folks to do? And this goes for marketing in general, but I feel like for audio, if you're thinking about that, I mean, you got to be very specific with the next steps and be clear with your call to actions. Make sure you're not. I mean, don't sell on a podcast, or at least we haven't found a lot of success in doing that. But give them something that's interesting that's relevant to the conversation. That's why we do those notes. That's like the most no-brainer thing we found. We're like, cool, well, we'll invest in taking these notes if we know that this is going to be a very valuable asset for free for the people listening. And, if there's someone new that's just discovered us because of a guest that we brought on, well, cool. The notes are going to be like the little carrot that gets you going a little deeper, but gives you so much more value. And then, of course, there's a whole email list. We're always staying up and giving a lot more value once they're on our email list. Maybe the coaching program, Pod Hackers for them. If not, that's cool. Because the way that we see it is, we're always going to shout out things that are interesting to us and our audience. And there's always an opportunity to, monetize off of that. Maybe it's affiliate promotions, some kind of partnership we're doing with a brand. And that's kind of how we see things. It's just a journey we're putting people on, and the podcast is kind of the glue that holds everything together. It's the discovery and the bond at the same time.
Love that. And I mean, you touched on it briefly, Pod Hackers, just so everyone can kind of understand a little bit about what Pod Hackers is all about. Give us just a little insight.
A little insight. Yeah, that's something that we weren't planning on creating. It's essentially everything we do in a course or a box. It has the templates, of course, the walkthroughs of how to launch a podcast and build it with the systems in mind, which most people don't think about because there's a lot that goes into it if it's unchecked. So if you start off on the right foot, build it that way, you can grow a community. We have ways to do that, and it's a lot of what we were chatting about here. Leveraging these other platforms, but strategically. So build it, and then growth hack your show. We're marketers first, but podcasting just kind of came into our lives. So how to grow an audience quickly, and then of course how to monetize is kind of the fourth piece. And we give all sorts of different ways that ourselves and our other folks that we work with in podcasting monetize. So there's something for everyone there, and it's essentially your roadmap for it and templates to do so.
It sounds like, Rachel, that you and I probably should sign up for that as well as we continue
Joe,
our journey.
Can you help us create a podcast?
Of course. You sound like the expert though, Rachel. I mean, you had Microsoft.
No, I'm just learning. Yes. We do want to create a podcast. We want to go that route. We just are figuring out what would it be? What would we talk about? Who would we bring on?
Yeah, so many people. We had actually got pitched, and they said they wanted us for the show. They never actually fulfilled on everything, but it was
Yeah.
called Love and War: The Entrepreneurial Journey.
I like it. I mean, that's very accurate. That's how, it's the yin and yang.
Well, and that's
So,
us,
yeah.
entrepreneur, corporate,
Uh-huh.
coming together, and then also the husband and wife and all those aspects. So it was,
I think it's rad.
that's it.
I
All
think
right.
there's
So
something
that's
that
what we're
let's
doing. We're going to,
let's
go to
chat.
Joe and Matt. We're going to be able to put this together, and we'll be able to get it out there. Man, Joe.
You're basically doing it all right now, by the way, doing these live streams. So it's like, you might as well have a podcast and put a little theme to it.
I know. It's true. You're right.
But like everyone always says, like, oh, that's one more thing. But if we have the right coach to be able to direct you the right way to be able to do it, it cuts that hole of that heaviness of being able to do it. So, man, dude,
Thank you.
Always appreciate you, Joe. Thank you so much. And where should they go to find you? Well, we know YouTube. They should be looking for the Hustle and Flowchart YouTube channel.
Yeah, so actually it's hustleandflowchart.tv, little redirect. So that'll be easy. That's the best way to find us for YouTube. I mean, our podcast is on all the networks, Hustle and Flowchart, and Podhacker. If you're interested in checking that out, podhacker.com gets you there, and you can see the whole thing. There's a lot of case studies on there too from people you might recognize.
Perfect.
And soon the Utahs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think Rachel might be going on there here soon. So,
yeah.
Do it.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And we will connect with you next week. Bye.